What's up, everybody? This is Simon. On this hour of the Ideal Hour podcast, we have Barbara Schreihans. Now, she is a pretty good tax coach and tax advisor and preparer. Your tax coach is her Instagram handle, and she has quite of a following. And there's just quite a lot of people that have small businesses that really need her type of advice and help. She's going to join us here for 1 hour to talk about some of the planning strategies, some things business owners should know, and we're going to get into it. Barbara, thank you for joining. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Let's talk about taxes, right? There's a lot going on with changes that are constantly happening, and business owners are not always keeping up. So what inspired you to get into tax strategy, and why do it? It's not the most exciting job, I would say, but you could make it exciting, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, accounting in general is not like the sexiest thing in the world, right? But once I was in the industry, and I did realize like most accountants suck. Like none of them are helping people save money in taxes. And they are terrible at communication because typically they're like introverts. They just want to like type away at the computer and their 10 key, if you know what that is. But once I got in the industry, I was like, there has to be a better way. Like, I don't want to just tell a business owner client, like, hey, sorry, you owe 50 grand this year that you weren't expecting to owe. It's like, shouldn't we as advisors be like, what can we do to lower this? Right. And I was tired of like the lack of communication, and I hated that I had to bill every 6 minutes for my time, and just like so many things in the accounting industry that I was like, there has to be a better way. And the only way to do it is to start my own firm. And so I started Your Tax Coach in 2020 after being in public accounting for over 10 years. Call it kind of like the anti-accounting firm, because I'm like, no one's going to track their time. We're going to be flat fee, value based. Like we'll charge you how much value we're providing you, not because you just have a quick question about your business, right? And it made taxes and accounting just like so much more fun, because now it's a game. Now it's like, okay, this is the income you've made. What can we do to lower the amount of taxes you have to pay? What credits are available to you? How do you want to spend your money, and what are your goals? And let's like build a tax plan around that. And so we've made it sexy, even though it's not a sexy.
I think anytime you save anyone money, that's sexy. So good for you. So it truly is sexy. I mean, people don't understand to save money is a big thing, right? With taxes, especially because if you buy something at $100, you technically, depending on what bracket you're in, you need to make $200 to buy something for $100. And, pre-tax savings are probably so beneficial if done right, versus post-tax purchases where everything's costing you a lot more. And so you started your own company, Your Tax Coach. Beautiful name, by the way. It's so cool. I love it.
Thank you.
And what are some of the challenges with starting a business in taxes? What were like some of your growing pains in starting your company? Because it's not easy to start a business, and it's not easy to stand out from the pack, even though you're kind of a renegade to save money. What were some of those challenges?
Probably my biggest one was not letting go soon enough. So luckily we grew really, really fast. Even though we started a company in 2020, which like, oh my gosh, COVID happened 3 months later. We helped our industry because every business owner needed us during COVID to stay open and to get all of the like things that were available, like the PPP loans and the SBA loans and all that. And so luckily, I was just like helping people, and they told all their friends. And so we were super busy. I didn't have that issue and that problem. Our problem was like we grew really fast, and I had no systems. I had no processes. It was just me. And like as a business owner less than a year old, like I didn't even know what SOP meant. Okay. And I had zero assistance, anyone on my team, and I should have hired earlier. But I was like, oh, I just have to scrounge all this money because it's not always going to be like that was my mindset originally. It's like I have to save it for a rainy day. I can't afford to hire an assistant. But a year, like 15 months later, I made my first full-time salary hire. So March 2021. And once I hired someone, I was like, oh my gosh, I should have done this sooner. And now I like outsource and leverage everything. I'm like, what can I not do? And I will hire people for that. So now we have 30 full-time employees. It's like I should have hired sooner.
Good for you. I mean, congratulations. I know that feeling where you want to control everything and there's that worry of, how much can I afford to spend? What if it's a good month, bad month? And that's probably the delay. But I feel like what you said is really good. Like, what can I not do? Because what you are doing is more important when you're deviating or delegating those tasks to someone else. That's awesome. I'm happy for you. And you have over 200,000 followers on Instagram, TikTok. How has social media played for you a role in growing so fast? I think it was a big one for you, huh?
So before I even started your tax coach, I was working at someone else's firm, right? And I could make like a 10% commission if I brought new clients on. And so on my personal Instagram, I was already posting kind of like things about taxes and accounting, and all my friends would ask me questions whenever I would post something. So I kind of already knew like people were curious about taxes already. I feel like it's this like unspoken thing. Like nobody knows, but everyone has questions about it. And so once I started your tax coach, I was like, I have to have an Instagram page for it. And so I just started posting like the day to day, what I'm doing in the day. Like, even if it's just me having coffee, and then it's like, okay, I have 4 sales calls and 4 client meetings, and I prepared 2 tax returns, and I saved this person $10,000 by doing XYZ. And people loved it. And really it was just showing like my day, and people are inherently like curious is what I found out. And so it's like, okay, people are inherently curious. I'm just going to keep posting, even though to me it seems kind of boring, but we'll keep posting and see how it goes. And I think we'll hit 250,000 followers tomorrow on Instagram. So we're planning our celebration. And then TikTok is weird. I still don't love TikTok. We do have a lot of followers on there, but I feel like it's kind of like the place of haters. So much riffraff.
I didn't know. I never got into TikTok myself. I don't know why. I hate posting personally, but I'm a guy too, but I have to do it for the podcast, right? But do you ever get overwhelmed? Like, oh God, I got to post, or I got to like keep up with the consistency? Cause it's, I think, a big part of it.
I outsourced that really quickly too. Social media is our biggest time suck, right? Like you can just scroll on your phone for hours and hours. And so now we have 4 full-time people that just work on content and social media. I mean, it's still very much like I have to be on the camera, like I'm behind, I'm still there, but it's like we have someone that's just doing all of our copy, and we have someone that's just doing all of our social media engagement, and someone just doing marketing, and someone just like creating all the aesthetics and courses and stuff like that. It's still all my ideas and all of me like in front of the camera, but as much of it as I can, I'm like, okay, I don't want to write the copy. You write what to say, I'll be there. But honestly, like outsourcing social media is one of the first things I tell business owners to do when they're asking like, how can I grow faster? Is social media is probably taking up too much of your time and you're not doing it right anyway. So just have an expert do it, and it'll save you time and increase your money, because the more people that can see you, the more money hopefully you make.
And how did you did outsourcing, and obviously a lot of people are doing that since COVID, since people don't want to come into the office anyway. How were you able to find, or what do you look for your outsourced talent? Like, what some advice can you give to the listeners to find that right outsourced person, or where?
I would say like follow people that you're looking for contractors for. If you're looking for a contractor, when I first started, my social media manager was a contractor. Now everyone's in-house full-time salary employees. But for most people, a contractor probably will work great, but follow that person for a while, like see what they're doing. And I don't know why, but there's so many like social media managers out there that have no followers. And I'm like, I would never pay someone to do my social media management if they have no followers, right? It's kind of like, I don't know, I'd never have a real estate agent that doesn't own a house.
Yeah.
So like really vet the people, make sure they're going to fit like your values and what you're looking for, and also know like you're going to make the wrong choice a lot. That's just part of business ownership. Like we had a few contractors for social media management. Luckily, like we did have a really, really good one and a great team. But yeah, now we have everyone in-house. Everyone works remotely. We do have an office that a couple people go into the office in Scottsdale for, but we have people in 16 states now.
Good for you. And Scottsdale is a nice area. There's I got to make it out there. There's a car club out there that's really popular.
Yeah.
As far as hiring or managing teams that are remote, and 30 employees is a lot. I mean, it's not the biggest company, but it's not a small operation. There's people that are constantly, I bet, asking you questions. There's meetings, etc. How do you manage that? How do you make sure that your team has the same vision, the same drive, the same tenacity to keep going in a field of taxes, especially?
There are definitely a lot of pros to having a remote team, but there's cons to it as well, right? Like we can't just see everyone on a day-to-day basis to like see their body language or like know really how they're feeling, you know? Like you can be like, "How are you?" and everyone's always like, "Good, fine," you know, like but so that's the hard part for me. Like I'd love to have everyone in an office where like, you know, you can walk by everyone and like see how they're doing and like, "Oh, I can tell you're a little off today." So that's different, but we try to like close the gap we use Slack. And so we try to do voice notes as much as possible rather than like written, because I can hear it in people's voices a lot easier than if they're typing it. And plus like things are less likely to be misconstrued if you're saying it rather than typing it. And so we use Slack a ton. And we do like fun Fridays where everyone's on Slack and we do like a Mad Lib game or like just like a fun, quick little 30-minute game. Everyone checks in and out on Slack with voice notes like, "Hey, this is what I'm working on for the day." And they have to say something they're grateful for. And so we, in a lot of team meetings, you know, and we do get everyone together once a year. It was twice a year, but now it's like the team's getting so big, it's really expensive to fly everyone in. Going together for that. Yeah. So like
You don't need an extra like video cable guy or something just to come to Toulouse, do you? I mean, I'll make it out
maybe.
there. Yeah.
But yeah, so we try to get everyone together, and then there's different departments too in our company. So like we have the tax strategy department, bookkeeping, creative, operations, the C-suite. And so we'll have different weeks for that as well. So like the tax team, we all got together in January, the creative team, we all got together in February, and so on. And so trying to still meet in person, I think, is important. Like, yes, remote is great and you don't have to drive into an office and stuff, but I do think there has to be like some in person. As a leader, you know, I feel like we're always trying to fix problems and telling people what to do rather than like, "Hey, let's just meet for a week and like hang out." And
I love face-to-face. Yeah, I miss it. It used to be more frequent, especially in the Bay Area, where we're kind of like the pioneers of not going into the office. It killed the downtown, unfortunately. But thanks for sharing. I mean, that's a great way to make sure that people are happy, and the voice, I think, does tell a lot, right? That's wonderful that you were able to catch on to that. Let's talk about business owners and what they should know about taxes. Obviously, it's hard to start a business and be successful in the business. But what are some of the things, like a new person coming into your company or maybe a new person starting a business? What do you give them as first pieces of advice, or even as they go through their journey in that first year of business?
first thing we look at, like if you were to come to us for us to be your accountants or tax strategist, is like, are you structured correctly? Because the way that you're structured is going to dictate how you're taxed. And most people are not structured in a way that is tax advantageous. Like some people don't even have an LLC. And like, if you don't even have an LLC, you're putting your butt on the line. Like you have no protection. If someone were to sue you, they can take every single one of your assets. They can take your house. They can take your cars, your money. Like retirement accounts, things like that. And so just someone that doesn't have an entity at all, it's also called a sole proprietorship or sole prop for short. And so that in and of itself, like, get some liability protection. Maybe that's through an LLC. That's like a legal thing. So you should definitely talk to your attorney. But then if you are an LLC and you're making money, we need to look at, should we restructure you to something like an S corporation? Because just switching to an S corp can save you $25,000 in taxes a year. And if your spouse is on your business with you as well, like that could save you $50,000 a year. Oh, wow. So just that alone. So like, what's your structure? Let's set the right foundation. And then we look into, like, I call it writing off your life. Like, what expenses are you already paying in your day-to-day life that we can turn into a business expense? So that's things like travel and meals and cars, all the things we're already spending money on. How can we make it business related and write it off in your business so that it costs you less?
Yeah. So your business pays for it, and then you don't have to pay for it after paying taxes.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
As far as going back to S corps or LLCs or C corps, the different structures, obviously that's for their legal advice. But why would someone, for example, from a tax benefit, want to keep an LLC versus an S corp or versus a C corp? Briefly, I'm sure it's very complex, but
there's intricacies to it. But most business owners, like a service-based business, if you're making over $40,000 a year, it probably makes the most sense to be an S corporation, just to save that money on self-employment tax. Like I mentioned, like you can save $25,000, $50,000 right there. But also S corps and C corps are 15 times less likely to be audited. So even irregardless of tax savings, I love S corps because it's protecting you more from being audited. And like, just the headache. I mean, even if you're doing nothing wrong, like no one should be afraid of being audited, but it's a pain in the butt. Like, you have to pay us a lot of money to walk you through an audit, to be in front of an IRS agent. And it's going to cost you hundreds of hours of your life that you could be going out and making money. And so just like the audit protection, switching over to an S corp or C corp makes sense to me. But clients always ask, like, when does it make sense to switch from a financial perspective? Okay, the $40,000 mark is that, but if you're looking at it from like hundreds of hours of being audited, you should switch now, no matter how much you're making,
And then as far as an LLC, is there like typical protection benefits that an LLC would offer a client, maybe above beyond an S corp, or are they kind of very similar? I know it's a member-based program, but would an LLC give you, can you treat an LLC as an S corp or no?
Yeah, so you actually have to have your LLC first, S corp, or you have your C corp first. So an S corp is not an entity per se, it's just a tax election. So most people, they start their LLC and then they make the tax election to be an S corp. You're still an LLC for protection purposes. Or if you started a C corp first and you elect to be an S corp, you're still a C corp for liability protection. But for tax purposes, you're looked at by the IRS like an S.
And then you also started a podcast, which is really, really cool. On the podcast, obviously, you're talking about saving money. This is, again, sexy, right? So, what's the name of the podcast, and why did you start it?
Yeah, our podcast is called Life Changing Money. And I started it because really, like, our clients' stories were so cool. And we realized, like, people can make money doing absolutely anything. Like, I have a client making millions of dollars because he created a sound that he then monetized. Like, literally, he just couldn't get his baby to fall asleep, so he created this sound and now makes millions of dollars because it helps other babies fall asleep. Like, just like the weirdest things. We have OnlyFans clients that make millions of dollars.
That's an interesting concept. I think a lot of people make money off OnlyFans nowadays. It's kind of crazy.
We have a 19-year-old client making millions of dollars, like, came from poverty, like, came from nothing. And she's not even like getting naked, right? But she's making millions of dollars. And so really life-changing money was just to share the word of like people can make money from anything. And the money that we were saving people is life-changing. Like we've had people get out of abusive relationships because they were now able to afford. We've had people adopt a baby that they wouldn't have been able to afford if they didn't get that refund check from the IRS. And so that's really like the premise behind life-changing money.
That's wonderful. And then in the life-changing money, do you have guests on there on your podcast where they talk about these cool experiences, or a bunch of OnlyFans models or Instagram models? What can someone expect from your podcast or a guest?
Yeah, so it's a weekly podcast, comes out every Wednesday. And so I'm interviewing a guest every week, but once a month is a solo episode, because our followers are always like, can you talk about this or can you talk about that? And so one episode's a solo episode, and then the other 3 weeks are me interviewing cool people.
Very awesome. And now that you know, obviously under discretion, you see what people are making money on, where people are struggling in what types of industries and so forth. Mm-hmm. What would you say is a really good industry for someone looking to start out, whether it's personal brand building or even industries where you go, wow, those are profitable, because you see in general the data behind all the tax preparations and accounting. What are some of the hottest industries and some of the hottest trends going on right now?
I could go so many directions with this question. I'll say for most profitable, it's the industries that are coaches or like people that have courses, right? Because your overhead is pretty low unless you're spending all your money on ads. But big but, it is really hard to make money as a coach or a course creator these days because it's so saturated. If you are successful, that is a very profitable industry, like 50% or more. If I were to start another business, I would start it in a trade. So HVAC, roofing, construction, something that's not going to go away anytime soon, and something that people always need, but it's a very low profit industry. Like we're talking 10% is good. And a lot of people that go into the trades, not to stereotype, but they typically know, like they're really good at what they do. Like they're a really awesome plumber. They know nothing or marketing or anything. So like their potential is so big, but they never post anything to social media. They don't know how to get a Google site so that people can look them up and say like plumber near me, you know? So like what I see a lot, and I'm going to stereotype here with like a guy opening a plumbing company, right? But what we see a ton is when the wife, if it's a husband-wife relationship, if the wife comes into the business, every time she comes in as like CEO and crushes it. So like I want to open up all these trade businesses because I'm like, I know I could crush it. I'll find the guys to do the work, but like I can market the crap out of it, and I know how to run a business. I know how to like, we're not going to have any outstanding invoices. Like people are going to pay their bills. And so honestly, like to really answer your question, anyone can make money doing anything, but it's like, how much are you willing to put into it and how much are you willing to learn?
Just to kind of circle back to that, and I've been in so many different businesses in my 20, 30 years or whatever. Plumbing is incredible. HVAC, just to quote out, our building was like 120 grand in HVAC here. And it's a really good trade. And especially if you're in a hot area where they need their, ACs fixed. Welding is another one I want to add, which is a really good trade. But you're right. When you add a component of a wife and you add a component of the right team around you, that business really takes off and you become a big plumbing company versus a handyman type, right? How often do you see that working out with a husband and wife duo? And what are some funny stories where it's just doesn't work out, or you're dealing with two magnets that are not clicking?
Yeah, I see it a lot where a spouse comes in and helps the company grow. And eventually I think a lot of the companies, that's what happens. The trade business starts making a lot of money. It doesn't make sense for the wife, we'll say, to keep her job, whatever she's doing. So, hey, let's come work for the business. And it works a lot of the time. But, and I don't know if it's business that breaks them up or, they were going to get divorced anyway for various different reasons. But we're typically one of the first people to know when a couple's getting divorced because they come to us before they've even told their spouse, because they're like, I'm thinking of getting a divorce. What is that going to look like for tax and financial purposes, right? So it's a big burden also on us. I feel like we're always money therapists as well. But yeah, I mean, it can go really, really bad. We have a client right now that she is trying to take his entire business. He started the business, she came in and started working and she completely shut him off of all QuickBooks access, all financial access.
Money therapist. That's a great episode for you to have on your podcast to talk about that, because I would imagine you're listening to both sides and having to be neutral, and then also worrying about the money part of it and not giving the wrong advice or the right advice. That's crazy. What do you see out of, like, because you deal with both? I would imagine the wife is very involved when they are. What do you see is a successful team? Like, what are the traits that the husband and the wife have where they are like sticking together and successful versus the ones that may be splitting up and trying to take everything from the other?
From a business perspective, it's the people that stay in their lanes that are the most successful. So like, if we'll say that plumber example, he's just out there doing the work and that's his job. He's not then trying to like, hey, did you update this invoice or is the QuickBooks done or like whatever? And she's working on the marketing and the accounting and whatever. And she's staying in her lane. And so it's really, I think, and my husband and I do this in our business because we're also working together in our business, is like you have to create job titles and roles and have them defined and stay in your lane, because it is so easy to like try to cross over and then you become like micromanagey and you begin to resent each other or like you're starting to bicker about dumb things. And so create boundaries, stay in your lane, and like just trust each other. Just like in a relationship, like you have to trust each other.
Great advice. Stay in your lane. Don't overstep each other. And this will prevent arguments and then probably getting back to ground level if you bicker and start all over. What are some of your who are some of your role models or entrepreneurs that you go, wow, that person's doing it really well out there? Or do you have any?
Oh, that's a tough one. I feel like I've been in so many like mastermind groups and I've been to so many conferences that I think I've been like disappointed so many times when I see behind the curtain, because I always can see behind the curtain, especially in taxes and finance. And I'm seeing people's money. Like a lot of people overstate how much money they make. A lot of people overstate a lot of things that now I'm like, I don't really want to like look up to this person just because I see them on social media. So it's more of like, I just want to be the most impactful business owner and we'll grow at a steady rate just because we provide value. And I don't want to be disappointed by looking up to one person and not have them be the person I thought. Very pessimistic.
No. Listen, you're not the only person on a podcast that said, people may have, 1 million followers, but they can't balance their checkbook and want everything for free. And I've had marketers that have come on and said, hey, I got this person that's got 1 million followers. He pretends that they're so wealthy, this female, and posts all these pictures and this and that, but can't pay my bill. So I agree. You got to weed out who's the real deal, right? And you see the balance, the profit and loss statement at the end of the year, and you see what's really right. What are 3 pieces of financial advice that you could give to somebody, whether they're a business owner or individuals out there, maybe they're only fans, superstars, etc.? What are some financial advice pieces that you want to share?
I would say get the right team around you, right? Like there are reasons why there are tax strategists and financial advisors and attorneys and all of those people around you. Like don't just like try to cheap it out and go to like I'm trying to think of that cheap legal website. I can't even think of it. Yeah, LegalZoom. There we go. Like don't just go to LegalZoom. Like we're always fixing people's freaking LegalZoom things, and don't go to like 1-800-accountants. Like the cheaper you are with the experts, the more it's going to cost you later. So like build your team of respectable advisors around you would be number one. Number two is know your numbers. So you don't know anything about your business if you don't know your numbers. And it's not about the revenue, right? Like people can say, and this drives me nuts on social media too, like people can be like, I brought in $10 million. And in my head, I'm like, well, what was your profit? Like you could have a negative profit. You could have made $2 or 2 million. Like I have no idea, but you didn't make 10 million. But also knowing like, where is your money going? What are your expenses? How much of a runway do you have until you run out of money? And we can't strategize on your taxes. We don't know how much you're going to owe in taxes unless we know your profit. So knowing your numbers is huge. And that even if you have a bookkeeper do your numbers, but like you still got to know it. And then the third one would probably be to like invest in yourself. I think that's like the biggest ROI you could ever give yourself. So whether that's just be a student forever, like my saying is always a white belt, because you can always be a beginner. Like the second you think you're an expert, like that's when you're going to fail. And so try to keep always learning and just being a better human and business owner and spouse and parent or whatever your roles are. And yeah, it'll never disappoint you.
I think the great pieces of advice on all three, just to recap, guys that are watching, know your numbers. Revenue doesn't mean you're rich, right? You could have a $10 million company or a $500,000 company, but make $250,000 on both and have less headache without having to manage 10 million in revenue. Take care of yourself. That's a big one, because what's all the money in the world? I mean, you save 1 year, but if you're not healthy or not taking care of yourself, it doesn't really matter. So Barbara, what about your personal life balance there? I know you love to travel. You mentioned you love coffee. I picked that up earlier. I can imagine why, because of crunching numbers and doing videos and all that fun stuff. What about your personal life? Where do you love to travel to, and how important is that cup of coffee in the morning?
Oh my gosh, I have to have coffee before I do anything. My next business venture is probably opening up a coffee shop, but like something totally different than anyone's ever experienced. So it's taking me a while to actually execute on the business plan, but it will hopefully happen in late 2024. How important coffee is. I think it brings people together. It can build community. It's like a love language. And so, yes, love the coffee. Love just like being outside, whether it's walking or working out, some kind of like moving your body. Love traveling. That's a big passion of like our whole family. So we just spent like the month of December in France, and we're spending April and May back again in Europe and then Mexico. And we'll probably live abroad at some point. So 2019, we were actually trying to get our New Zealand citizenship. I love New Zealand. Have you ever been?
I hear it's beautiful, but I've never been. I had
amazing.
A special forces member from New Zealand come on the podcast like a week ago, but he said it's beautiful there as well.
Yeah, so beautiful. Like you have to go to experience it. So much hiking. And then COVID happened and New Zealand completely shut down for like, we haven't tried again for that, but I could see us living in like a camper van in New Zealand. I think more like probable is we'll live in France for a little bit. My husband speaks French. He learned it in the military. So it's a lot easier for him to like get around. I don't know French, but he knows French. And we loved Paris. And so I think maybe like put the kids in international school, do that. And maybe when they're older, we'll like retire in New Zealand or something.
It's a beautiful language. I've been to Paris. Beautiful place. I don't know recently how it's changed because it's been a while, but just by you sharing that, I think it's also important for people to know that when you pick a career or a business, whatever business that may be, like if you're a plumber doing the skill trade, you're not going to be able to live in France, right? But it sounds like in your profession, you're going to be able to run your company if you want from a different remote location, or you have been doing it while traveling. Describe that, because you're buying freedom for yourself to do what you love to do or to do what you want to do while still having income coming in. How have you been able to achieve that? Did you find a replacement to assume your position, or how do you do that?
Our business, we can work from anywhere. When we take longer trips, like a month or longer, we build in like 1 day a week of the travel where we are working. So it's not like we're just effing off for a whole month and like not doing anything. I mean, I'm checking my emails all day. I'm checking Slack all day, making sure the team is good and the team is executing and all of that. So it's not like we're not working, but it is just like a lot of freedom still. Like you're still in Paris looking at the Eiffel Tower, drinking a cappuccino while you're checking your Slack. Beautiful. Doesn't feel like work. But we've also noticed like we kind of go stir crazy if we don't like have a week where we're like 10-hour workday. So we do build that in. And I think it's just about like having the right team around you. I'm still the CEO, so there's not a CEO to like replace me, but I have a COO. And so she's really the one that like executes all of my visions for the company. But back to your like plumber example, I do think a plumber could go travel for a month or a few months. You just have to have an operator, right? Like you have to have your COO. And so you could still, Mr. Plumber could still travel and check on their Facebook ads and, make sure emails are being responded to and do posts on Instagram and all of these things to make sure business is still flowing, but you have an operator back home that is like, dispatching the people. And
That's a great point. You're right. I think if the company gets big enough, then everything's still moving when you're not there. Or that's the definition of a successful company to me, is when you're not around, is money still being made and things flowing properly, right? That's like the biggest thing, because I can imagine you would see it as well with business owners. If they tend to exit out of the company, and if they don't have a good team around them, or if it's not structured properly, then that company starts dipping. And I've experienced it in my personal businesses as well. Is that common, where you see if like a owner is kind of hands off a little bit, things start crumbling, or do you see it in your preparation or accounting?
do you think a lot of times the owner still has to like be around? Like it's still your business. Nobody's going to care about your business as much as you do ever. Like there is not a paycheck you can pay someone to care as much as you do. And so you still have to like, be a part of the business in some way, shape, or form. But that doesn't have to mean you working 16 hours and burning out and being exhausted. It just means like you have to keep tabs on things and, hey, is this being executed? Is that being executed? Yeah.
I gotcha. And just getting back to the tax industry, is there any big changes that are happening in 2024 that we all may want to be aware of, or is it kind of still make sure you just get a great tax preparer or accountant such as yourself, and make sure everything's checked off?
It's always changes every year to taxes, which I think is also why I really like it, because it like keeps me on my toes. I'm like always having to read about new things and go to different trainings. The biggest one this year, it's actually not a tax change, but every business owner needs to know about it, is there's a new FinCEN requirement, and FinCEN is like the Financial Crimes Enforcement Agency, still part of the US Treasury like the IRS, but it's not a tax thing. Is every single LLC or S Corp, C Corp has to register on the FinCEN's website the year. So if you started an LLC prior to 2024, you have until the end of this year to register, but you have to register or you get a $500 per day penalty, up to 2 years of jail time. Like, it's the craziest law change I've seen in my 14-year career. Like, nobody knows about it. And I think they're doing that on purpose, which is also kind of crappy. But then if you start an LLC this year, so like we've already started LLCs this year because we get them for each rental property that we buy. But you say you get one this year, you only have 90 days to file that registration form with them. And if you start one next year, you only have 30 days.
Why would they do it if they already kind of have your info? It's so interesting.
And actually, the state has more info on you than that's why they started this. What they're really trying to do is know who actually owns every single LLC and has beneficial ownership, which is not really an owner. This could be like, they want to know who your COO is, who your CFO is, anyone like on your C-suite. And they don't want like shell companies. So, you know, like an LLC can own an LLC, that can own an LLC, that can own a trust, that can own like whatever. They're trying to get rid of that because they don't know who owns what. And that's where like scamming happens. They can't find who the scammers are. So that's really the point of it. The downside is like, who's not going to file that report? So like, are they really going to benefit? I don't know.
I think the downside is going to be like the average business owner that doesn't know about this at all. And I haven't heard about it until you told me about it, which is crazy. So now I got to talk to my CPA and go, why didn't you tell me about this? And the downside is, if you're a small business and you don't file it, $500 a day is a lot of money to small businesses. That's insane.
It's a lot. Yeah.
All right. You mentioned a little bit as we kind of wrap up this podcast, you mentioned you also invest in real estate and you put them in LLCs. Tell me a little bit about that. Has that been, how did you get into real estate investing? Because it's a great way to build wealth long-term and pass it down and so forth.
Yeah. If you ask me like 4 things people should do financially, my number 4 would be like, don't increase your lifestyle when your revenue increases. You should be investing that money, right? And so as our business grew, we then took our extra funds and are investing in real estate. And we've invested in single family homes, in townhomes, condos, bigger apartment complexes. And really that's because like, I don't want to work forever. Like, we want to eventually retire. And real estate provides the best tax advantages of any investment out there. Hands down, like there is no argue. It's just math. Real estate is the best. So not only are you getting cash flow from your rental properties, at least you should be, or it was a bad investment. You're getting cash flow, you're getting depreciation, which is an expense on your tax return that can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like we had a client last year with $6 million of profit that she's paying nothing in taxes because we were able to lower it with real estate. And so you're getting depreciation, you're getting appreciation of your property. So it's going up in value every year. On average, it's 5%. So you're getting cash flow, depreciation, appreciation, and someone else is paying your mortgage for you. So you're getting equity. And when you have equity, you can pull that out, get that money tax-free. It's the only time, unless you die, that you get money tax-free. And you can take that money that you pull out and buy another property. So really, you only have to buy one rental. Build up the equity, pull it out, and buy more.
Keep buying. And how many, it sounds like you guys have quite a few properties. How many properties do you now have? And are you starting your own property management company because there's so many, or what's going on there?
So we have over 650 doors, to say. Those we co-own with other people. So we've done syndications and we're general partners on bigger apartment complexes. But we still also buy like our own single family homes. We're in escrow in a 5-plex right now. And really like we'll just buy if the numbers make sense. Like don't make it emotional. Like, are we going to make money on it? Yes or no? And if it's a yes, like we'll buy it.
At that point, do you do your own property management
Oh,
company?
property management. Yeah. My husband does all the property management of it. And that's also for a good tax reason because he could be a real estate professional and there's more tax advantages for that as well.
Is there a, do you have to have a real estate license to be a real estate professional, or can you just own property?
No, that's a common misconception that you have to have your license. You just have to spend 750 hours in an industry of real estate. So that could be construction, that like remodeling or new builds or whatever. That could be property management. Yes, a real estate agent. Sometimes mortgage brokers count, but not always. And so those are the big ones, like usually construction, real estate agents. But also like it also doesn't mean like you have to be this big construction company. It could just mean like you're spending the 750 hours on your own properties, doing your own stuff. And so you have to have the 750 hours and it has to be more than anything else. So that means you can't also have a W-2 job that you spend 1,000 hours on, right? So you have to have 750 more than anything else. And then you have to materially participate. It's kind of a difficult topic to grasp, but we're coming out with a real estate course in March about tax strategies for real estate. And so we go into all of that. Our master class is for free if any of your listeners want to join and just like know more about real estate.
That's awesome. I'll definitely link it and you'll share it, I'm sure. And obviously we'll link your Instagram and everything else, your podcast, in the YouTube and everywhere we post it so people could find you. All right. As we wrap up, that's great. Thank you for sharing on the real estate part. That's I think that is the best way to build long-term wealth. And as you mentioned earlier, you don't want to work forever, but you want that money coming in and passive income is great. If you could go back in time, I ask everybody, at any point in your life and give yourself advice, what would that be? And when would that be?
Just to believe in myself sooner. For sure.
Just like, just to have the confidence to do what you're doing now, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't start till I was 30. And in my 20s, I was just like not confident, knew nothing about business. And now we have like clients that are in their 20s. And I'm like, you don't know how good you have it.
That's great. Well, Barbara, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing a little bit about yourself. As well as sharing some advice. I'm sure tax is very complex. Anybody watching that wants to reach out will reach out. We can't go too in depth without you guys reviewing the actual person's profit and loss statements, their balance sheets, and so forth. So if anyone has any questions, please reach out to Barbara, your tax coach on Instagram. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for sharing. And coming on the Ideal Hour to give us a little bit about what it takes to be sexy in the tax field. And I think you guys are on your way. So that's great.
Thank you for having me.